Hello, and welcome to Thingamajigs, the exciting history of mundane things. I am Ben.
And I am Danielle. I did it. We finally did it. After 3 weeks, I finally have an exciting thing.
An exciting thing? An exciting history or an exciting thing?
No, it's an exciting thing.
Well, we're going to have to stop this episode right now because that's not the name of the podcast. It has to be an exciting history of a mundane thing.
Okay, well...
Back to the drawing board.
Give me the definition of mundane, and then I will tell you whether it falls into both mundane and exciting.
Okay, the definition of mundane is lacking interest or excitement. Dull.
Well, okay. It may be...
Hang on, wait. There's actually a second definition for the word, and it might be perfect. It is as follows. Of this earthly world rather than a heavenly or spiritual one.
Okay. Our topic today is religiously mundane, yet spiritually exciting. I find it exciting. It is my favorite alcoholic beverage. St. Patrick's Day is tomorrow, so what do you surmise our alcoholic beverage is? It starts with a B and it ends with a ear.
Bong Island Iced Tea.
Bong Island Iced Tea. You know, that's actually a great name. Someone should make that a drink.
Is it served in a bong?
Of course, and it has a skunky aftertaste.
You know, I once took a tour of a distillery in Arkansas. I think I've mentioned it in an episode before.
Oh, have you? I think you have.
They had a beverage, you might call it. I don't know legally if you can call it that. The companies who manufacture like edibles and things use methanol to clean their machinery. And the owner of the distillery got some kind of deal going on where they'd send him the methanol that they used to clean their marijuana processing machinery, and then he would just put it in a bottle and drink it.
That sounds disgusting.
It is disgusting.
That sounds like waste product that they put in a bottle as a novelty.
It is a waste product that they put in a bottle as a novelty.
What did it have a name?
What did he call it? He did have a fun name for it, and now I'm blanking. I can't remember what it was called. It was something fun like Skunkworks or...
How many regular beers did you have before you drank the skunky beer?
Let's see.
How many beers did it take to get you to a frame of mind that you were willing to try experimental marijuana byproduct beverage?
Let's see. We went to that bar first. And then we went to a different bar second.
And then you went back?
And then we went back.
Oh my gosh.
So, and I was with Figgy. So we'd probably had at least a few Jaeger bombs by that point. Probably a few beers as well.
It's kind of funny for me to think about you doing this because you don't drink anymore. Like, not that you don't drink anymore, but you really don't drink much anymore. It's very rare. So thinking of you drinking a lot of beer and a couple of Jaeger bombs and then going back for a skunk beverage maybe explains why you don't drink anymore.
Maybe.
We're getting terribly off topic.
Shout out Postmaster Spirits in Newport, Arkansas. Makers of Trump Tonic.
Wah, wah.
It's a fantastic beverage, actually. It's really good.
Is it orange?
And it has a funny... Yes. It is very orange, and it has a funny label. So go to Newport, Arkansas, check out Postmaster Spirits, and get some Trump Tonic if they still sell it. Also, ask for a tour of the building. It's really cool. It's an old Postmaster's headquarters, and it's really cool. Top-notch historical destination.
Tomorrow's St. Patrick's Day.
Is it?
Yes.
Is it?
Yes.
Like our tomorrow or their tomorrow?
Our tomorrow.
Is it?
By the time they listen to this, St. Patrick's Day will have already happened.
Yesterday was St. Patrick's Day. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Why'd you say tomorrow?
Well, because it really is tomorrow, and you can't tell for sure when people will listen to this. Not everybody listens to it the day that it drops. We'll just say this week. With St. Patrick's Day this week, I thought we would talk about beer. My favorite alcoholic beverage.
What about it?
Most people imbibe in this frothy beverage on St. Patrick's Day.
They do what to it?
Imbibe.
They what?
Imbibe.
What? Hey, Google, define imbibe.
Here's the definition of imbibe: formal, often humorous. Drink alcohol.
Oh.
Wow, that's it? I have expected more.
All right.
I usually have a green beer, which is just a regular beer that I have put green food coloring in. It's festive, which is very unlike me because, well, not the festive. I'm a very festive person.
Too festive, you might say.
I separate my beer and wine into parts of the calendar. So between
There are 2 seasons in Danielle's year.
beer season and wine season. Wine season starts the first day of fall and ends the first day of spring, which is when beer season starts. So between fall and winter, I'm drinking wine, and between spring and summer, I'm drinking beer. Yeah, I'm always very torn about St. Patrick's Day because St. Patrick's Day falls within wine season. So I feel weird about it, but also it's St. Patrick's Day. You have to have green beer on St. Patrick's Day. So beer is a very old drink. Not the oldest alcoholic drink, but pretty dang close. I believe the oldest alcohol drink is mead. Do you know what mead is?
Isn't it where they just take a bunch of crap and stick it in a barrel for a long time?
No, like the distinctive ingredient for mead is honey. I think vegans are against mead.
Do vegans not eat honey?
I don't really know, but I know that the cheap, easy way to make mead is you just take the whole hive and you submerge it, and that kills all the bees.
Maybe shake the bees off first. I don't want bees in my beer either.
My mom was a beekeeper, and I'm highly against all flying, stinging things, but I make an exception for bees because they're bees and they're important. But whenever she would go and rob the hives, I never went with her. I would meet up with her after she had already taken the slats out and brought them far away. Many bees still follow you, but usually by that point, they're so focused on gathering as much honey as they can, they're not really paying that much attention to you. But there are quite a lot of bee fatalities, even in a kind robbery. That's why you have to sift it.
It's a bummer.
Because you'll get
corpses.
Yeah.
But is there anything better than sticking a bit of honeycomb in your mouth with honey? Get that nice waxy chew like those nasty little wax bottles that tasted like acid. Those are great.
So yeah, if you're a vegan, let us know. It would make sense that they don't, because I have been a part of robbing hives and there is definitely bees that die. I can't imagine a vegan supporting that. But on the other side, if you don't rob the hives, they will just continue to fill the hives with honey until there's no more room for their babies, and then they just leave.
That's not very smart. Silly gooses. Yeah, I think it depends on the reason you're a vegan. Some people don't like, locking millions of chickens in a cubic foot of space. The farming process is usually very torturous to animals, but honey isn't that bad.
I've often wondered if a vegan owned a farm, would they eat the eggs in the milk because they knew that those animals were not tortured to gather those products.
Let us know, vegans. What are your thoughts on that? So beer, how did that start?
So it's difficult to date exactly when we started brewing beer. It's almost like wherever there have been people, there has also been beer. Some anthropologists think that one of the reasons the Neolithic Revolution happened was because people wanted a steady supply of the grains they needed to make beer. Obviously, controlling and distributing food was important for many reasons, but I can see beer being one of those reasons. And again, this time period is hard to nail down, but it was somewhere in the 10,000 BC area.
It's a long time ago.
Part of this is because we didn't just all wake up and decide, well, it's 10,000 BC. Now I guess it's time to plant some fields and build a house or a hut. Maybe invent money. I don't know. But if this is true, that would mean that we knew about beer before we settled. Hunter-gatherers likely had brewskis after a long day of chasing antelopes. I don't know what they chased.
Dinosaurs.
I don't know what they did chase, but I know that they did not chase dinosaurs. Beer and bread are very much regarded as civilized human experiences. And we know this because of this story from Epic of Gilgamesh, where this character, Enkidu. Mm-hmm.
If you have Enkidu, you should probably go see a doctor.
He couldn't because he was a wild man.
That's probably why his do was so inky.
He was living, well, not with the civilized people. He was created by a goddess, Aruru, to confront Gilgamesh, but there was this temple prostitute who took the wild man in and civilized him by giving him bread and beer.
Bring back temple prostitutes. I've been saying it for years.
So yeah, this, of course, magically turned him into a gentleman, because that's what beer does.
You know, whenever you go to a bar and there's always that one guy who's been there since like 8 a.m, and he's just like trapped some person in a corner and is telling them their whole life story and their views on politics and all of their conspiracy theories. That's just the highest level of gentleman.
So we have different dates for various places in the world. China was brewing a rice honey fruit drink around 7000 BC. Ancient Mesopotamia was brewing around 3500 BC. Could have been older. Ancient Egyptians got in on it around 3000 BC. Because Egypt was influenced by Greece and Rome and vice versa, wine was more popular. I think Egypt tried to get them into beer, but they definitely felt like wine was far more superior.
I feel like it'd also be harder to grow the ingredients for beer.
Wine is more expensive, and it still is. That was part of it. But wine was the choice of the rich, so it kind of gave that air of superiority. The word barbarian popped up a lot in regards to their opinions of people who drank and preferred beer. Wine snobs gonna be wine snobs.
Well, are they gentlemen or are they barbarians? Sort yourselves out, BC people.
If you prefer wine, then they're barbarians. But if you prefer beer, then you're a gentleman.
So it's not so much that they are barbarians / gentlemen as that I am a gentleman.
So you know how the Egyptians loved setting up their tombs like apartments and containing everything one might need? Well, beer was no exception. They brewed long-lasting beer for tombs, and it became one of the most common grave goods left in tombs.
So what you're saying is, if we break into the pyramids right now, we could be sipping on the finest, longest aged beverage.
No.
We could ever get our hands on.
No.
I'm in.
The weird little jar things that they have, the reason that they know this is because of the residue in it.
The heist is on.
At the time, beer was stored in jars and you would stick a straw in it, which would have been made out of like reed or clay. The clay one I saw was kind of closed off at the end, but had some holes that worked as a sieve. If you were really rich, you might have a gold straw, and they were really long.
Drinking beer through a straw doesn't sound very pleasant.
If you see a painting of people drinking out of a jug and there are long lines coming out of the jug up to the people, those are straws. A lot of them show a few people all with long straws sitting around a jug of beer. It was like a communal thing.
You know, gather around the beer and sip through a straw. Did they invent the silly straw?
Kind of, yeah.
Really? Knew it.
I mean, they weren't silly in a sense that, you know, they had like loop-de-loops and stuff, but they were extremely long. The straw wasn't just for the convenience of sitting back in your chair, though, and sipping your warm, fresh beverage. Yeah, did I mention it was warm?
Warm beer through a straw.
Yuck. It said that it was of a delicious flavor to certain palates, but the taste must be acquired. That was a Greek writer, general man named Xenophon.
Yeah, it still checks out.
You also needed that straw to break through the thick, crusty surface of yeast that hung out on the top of the jug.
Gross. Don't like that.
Also, it was kind of thick.
It was like a yeast smoothie.
Another benefit of the straw was you didn't get a mouthful of beer bits. There's no doubt they still got beer bits, but not like if you would have tried to tip that thing over and drink straight from it.
Hot yeast smoothie through a straw. Yum.
Also, they look kind of big. It would have been very difficult to do that. That's what the sieve was for in the straw, by the way, was to help filter out those
beer bits.
Yeah. It's also interesting to me that women were usually the brewers. There were these priestesses who sang hymns, and those hymns were pretty much just beer recipes put to music.
Is this true?
Mm-hmm.
That's really weird.
Of all the things that I have said to you, that's the one you're going to ask if it's true.
Yeah, no, that one's weird.
Is it?
Yeah, I don't go around like, boil your water at 350. Once it begins to boil, add yeast. You know? It's not really,
Hey, the best way to memorize something is to put a tune to it. Beer was an essential part of life, so much so that the Egyptians that worked on the pyramids were given a daily ration of just over a gallon of beer.
A daily ration of a gallon of beer?
Mm-hmm.
Sounds awesome.
Just over a gallon.
What a sweet gig.
There was no heavy machinery, so I guess it was all good. We should also keep in mind that time I told you that beer and meads and ales were thought of as safe ways to get liquids into your body. Water wasn't always clean, and in many cases, the alcohol was safer to consume.
For more on that, listen to the Johnny Appleseed episode.
The Babylonian Empire gave out a daily beer ration to citizens. Considering how crap it was to live in their time versus our time, I feel like they deserved it. Everyone born before the year 1799 deserves a daily ration of some kind of alcohol. Could you imagine living in a time without indoor plumbing? Running water. You peed in a pot and then stuck it under your bed.
Yeah, but they also didn't have to sit in traffic or worry about what their friends were saying on Facebook. They didn't have to figure out what a W-2 form was. A guy would just come to their door and then threaten them with a sword if they didn't give them all their money.
Did you see what Vaticus posted on
the face papyrus?
How dare he make scrolls about me? Here's an important bit of ancient history. The Nubians, they lived right on the Roman Empire border, had regular access to antibiotics. Specifically, the antibiotic tetracycline. We know this because it's still in the bones of the people who lived there. How? Why, you may ask? So it naturally occurred in the soil there, and they used it in their brewing method along with their grains, and they made beer. It said they might have known the therapeutic value of it, but I don't know. And because beer was not an adult beverage, everyone got it, so kids as young as like 2 years old were drinking. And I guess that was a good thing, since being a child was so dangerous, they needed all the help they could get. From what I read, it didn't seem like that was widely known. I mean, obviously, they also didn't know that it had antibiotics. They didn't know what that was. They just knew that, I guess, they didn't get as sick as other people. All right, so obviously, we weren't going to talk about beer and not talk about Germany. Probably the most famous beer brewers in the world. I might be wrong about that, but they are pretty famous. So where Germany is now, towards the south, is where the Celts were, and towards the north was the Germans. Unlike Romans, these people were largely illiterate. As we get further into the Middle Ages, that becomes more and more prevalent. For people to not have any general education, they were hecka beer makers. They made beer as early as 800 BC, but they called it ale, and they kept with the tradition of women largely being the brewers. The Germans eventually said, "We're German, and you're not German. You can't stay here," and kicked the Celts out. And they moved on to Wales or something, towards current Britain. A lot of them became British. I know there's some resentment between the Welsh and Irish and British. Norsemen liked to add psychoactive ingredients to their beer because getting drunk wasn't spiritual enough. The plants they used for it were sacred and magical. I mean, probably one of the best ways to commune with the gods, am I right? Nordics weren't the only ones to do this, though. I think the Aztecs also used psychoactive plants for spiritual purposes. Over time, the women gave over their beer brewing to Christian monks. Not all of it, though. We will get into how they got the rest of their brewing business taken from them. So monasteries were usually resting places along the pilgrimages that people took, and it was part of the hospitality to welcome people with beer.
I like that.
There's actually a monastery from 1349 that still makes beer. It's a Schwarzbier. Super dark and rich. It was described as chocolatey, coffee, vanilla, bread, nuttiness, and toasted malt.
Sounds nice. I like that.
These were people who tried it, not what the label says, to be clear.
How come when I go to a motel, they don't greet me with beer?
Remember when we got married?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they gave us some beers.
They gave me beer and they gave you one. We walked in our wedding garb, and they were like, ooh, these people just got married. Let's give them alcohol.
Pro tip, wear a tuxedo and a wedding dress when you book your hotel, you get free liquor.
So they were obviously very protective of their beer, and I guess in an effort to keep it safe, Bavaria in 1516 enacted a law, Reinheitsgebot, that restricted what ingredients could go in the beer, which were water, barley, and hops. Yeast was not mentioned, but they knew there was yeast in it. They didn't really consider yeast a new ingredient. It was more of a permanent fixture of brewing. Almost like it was understood. Prior to this, they were using Groot, which the Catholic Church was a big fan of because they were selling Groot, but then hops was discovered, and because hops provided a longer shelf life, most of the recipes switched over. The Catholic Church wasn't a huge fan of this.
Groot from, like, the Avengers?
No.
About to say Disney's gonna have a problem if they find out.
Groot's like a mixture of a bunch of things, like spices and stuff. But hops had too many benefits for the church to overcome. And hops was much cheaper because it could grow nearly everywhere. So medieval women who brewed beer, or alewives, were starting to get quite the business on their hands. Now remember, they're women, so everything is difficult, but they managed to sell commercially on a part-time schedule. Sometimes they were allowed to open an ale house. I guess because women knew how to brew beer and men wanted beer, they somehow slipped this one past them. And I bet the presence of women was also enjoyed.
Women are cool.
You know, you get to drink your beer and be served by a pretty lady. It was kind of the only thing women could do at the time to be independent, and women have always taken advantages where they could find them. I wonder if in the back of their minds they needed to take as much advantage for as long as they could, because like most things, as soon as any real money is being made, bigger, stronger people or businesses get involved and start picking at whatever it is you've created, trying to get a piece for themselves, or better yet, take the whole thing. So in this case, what caused the boom in profits was the Black Plague in the mid-1300s. Demand for ale rose and alewives started making more money, and the men started to notice. And men are able to borrow money and form guilds and build giant breweries, and hops giving that longer shelf life made it to where they could ship their product further to make even more money. And yeah, the women were pushed out. Also, have you seen how hops grows? It's mental. They're viney things that grow crazy tall if you provide them with proper stakes. And the hops part, the part that goes in the beer, kind of looks like a soft green pine cone. Kind of like how marijuana forms a soft green head that you pick. Hops does too.
I thought it grew more like barley. That's news to me.
So, Oktoberfest. Huge beer drinking festival.
Fun fact, not really important to the month of October.
Weirdly enough, it's held in September now, but whatever. Oktoberfest in its roots is actually an anniversary celebration of the marriage of Prince Ludwig and Princess Teresa. It was first held in Munich on October 12th, 1810. So, and it lasted for about a week. That is quite the wedding party. Let me give you the menu that these people were eating for almost a week. For free, by the way. 32,065 buns. 3,992 pounds of Swiss cheese. 400 kilos of mutton. 8,120 sausages. 13,300 pairs of smoked sausage. And 6,128 gallons of beer. I converted that last one because I couldn't envision a hectoliter. I'm American.
It sounds like we really need to be stepping up our wedding party game.
There was also some wine.
We've really dropped the ball.
There were 150 musicians and 2 theaters open for free as well. Oh, and there were parades, and the whole thing ended with a big horse race. So yeah, probably the most insane wedding ever. Today, Oktoberfest usually serves about 1,849,204 gallons of beer. This year, Oktoberfest will be from September 21st to October 6th. It was moved up because September has nicer weather.
That's fair.
Also, Oktoberfest is still free. There are no tickets or anything. You can walk right into a beer tent, but you do have to pay for the beer and food and rides and stuff.
Lame. They've really lost their way.
I highly suggest you do all the rides you want before you start drinking and eating. But you're also not the only person that will be vomiting that day, so do whatever you want. I am very excited about going to Oktoberfest one year. I have started the first steps in getting to Germany for Oktoberfest. In fact, your mom gave me a card for my birthday. And it was kind of scary looking at first because the envelope had the government bird with the botanicals. Like one side is plants and the other side is like arrows.
Government bird with the botanicals.
Yeah, the little thing in the insignia with the stuff around it. It's a bald eagle. It's a terrible name. It should be called a feathered eagle, but whatever.
It sounds like it should be called the government bird.
The government bird with the botanicals. It's on the floor in the Oval Office. I think. I don't know. I've never been to the Oval Office. Hollywood leads me to believe that there is a government bird on the floor of the Oval Office.
With botanicals.
With botanicals and arrows.
I should hope.
It's to get me a passport. That's what I asked for my birthday this year. Passports are expensive. So another big event near this time in 1814 was the London Beer Flood.
The London Beer Flood?
Not a happy event, but crazy enough that I'm going to tell you about it. There was an accident where one of the 22-foot tall wooden beer canisters burst and flooded, causing other vessels and barrels to be destroyed. In all, about 300,000 gallons of beer, that is a rough estimate, flooded out and broke the back wall of the brewery, where it swept into a poor part of town and killed 8 people.
Wow. That's very sad, but what a way to go. Swept away in a flood of beer.
You and I have talked about whether we would like to be told when and how we die. Could you imagine if you put in your name into a database and it gave you when and how you died and it popped up 1814, drowned in beer?
If some gypsy lady took your money to tell you your future, and she said, yes, you will be swept away and killed by a beer tsunami, you would demand your money back.
Or be really thrilled about it. I mean, I feel like only 8 people have died this way.
How many people in history have been killed by a flood of beer? Probably 8.
That brewery was nearly bankrupt, and those big wooden vats were eventually not used anymore. They were dangerous. George Washington had a big influence for America building its own breweries. In 1789, he refused to drink any beer that wasn't brewed in America, and the state of Massachusetts passed an act encouraging the production and consumption of American beer.
America
was pretty pro-alcohol until Prohibition, which was from 1920 to 1933. It, of course, went underground, but we lost a lot of flavor in that time. When it came back to shelves after Prohibition ended, it wasn't the same, and people didn't really notice until they tried beer from other countries. I think for the most part, we have better beer now. We see more creativity. I think everyone mostly agrees that imports are better, and you can't beat a tall glass of draft beer.
I like a Guinness. But also German beer is really good.
It's funny that you bring Guinness up. So the Guinness World Record book is actually named after Guinness beer.
Is it really?
Yeah, the managing director at the time, Sir Hugh Beaver, wanted a book that had weird facts or world records that people in pubs might need to know, I guess, for bar bets. You know, those drunk thoughts like how long or the longest fingernails need to be answered. And they provided the answers.
Heroes, dude.
I have a couple of beer fun facts. McDonald's sells beer on its menu in some countries.
And not in the good old US of A.
No.
That is shocking.
The strongest beer in the world is a beer called Snake Venom, and it is 67.5% alcohol by volume.
Is that legally beer?
It's brewed in Scotland.
How do they do that? I think it might just be whiskey.
You can swim in a pool of beer at the Schloss Starkenberger Brewery in Terens, Austria. So that leads me to believe that it is possible that more than 8 people have drowned in beer.
Number 9, baby.
Beer is the 3rd most consumed drink in the world after water and tea.
Tea?
Both China and Britain consume a lot of tea.
Oh yeah, I forgot about the Asians. Asians be drinking tea.
Water is the most consumed and tea is right after it.
You know, I like that. Good job, humanity. At least you're drinking more water than anything else.
There are people out there that don't drink water. I don't know how they're still alive.
I think we talked about that.
I know. I keep beating on this one. But how do you not suffer from headaches every day of your life?
To hear Danielle rant more about this, go ahead and listen to the episode of Bottled Water.
We're getting so many episodes now that we're starting to repeat ourselves. That's it. That's all I got.
Outstanding. What an exciting history of a mundane, spiritually thing.
I know we're not specifically talking about St. Patrick's Day, but I just have to mention that in Chicago, they dye their river green. The whole thing. It's green. They don't even do that in Ireland. That's something.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Thingamajigs, episode 40. Let's go, baby. And another exciting history of a mundane thing. Don't forget to grab a goose and a crazy straw.
For your warm, chunky beer.
Right from the jug. Thanks for listening.
Nah.